A father pushing his own son into a pit was the kind of sight that could silence an entire village, and that is exactly what happened that scorching afternoon when Rahim, a man known for his stern face and rough hands, did what no one expected. The gasp of horror that rose from the mouths of the villagers echoed louder than the boy's scream as his body tumbled down into the gaping hole dug near the fields. Mothers pulled their children close, men exchanged glances filled with disgust, and whispers flew through the crowd like sparks of fire leaping from dry wood. Aeon's cry of shock, his desperate call for his father, and the heavy silence that followed carved themselves into every heart. They had seen harsh men before, they had seen fathers who disciplined strictly, but no one had seen something so unthinkable, a father pushing his own son into darkness. The villagers shouted at Rahim, some threatening to call the elders, others cursing him under their breath. Yet he stood there, rigid, chest rising with heavy breaths, sweat mixing with the dust of his face. His eyes, however, were not filled with cruelty but with something unreadable, something no one dared to interpret. He did not move to help Aeon, nor did he speak to explain himself. His silence was louder than thunder, and in that silence the villagers found their reason to judge. "He has gone mad," one man shouted. "How could any father do this?" screamed another. Children hid behind their mothers as though Rahim himself were a beast who might push them into the same fate. Inside the pit, Aeon struggled to rise, his hands scraped and bleeding from the fall. His heart pounded in his chest, fear choking his throat as he looked up at the circle of faces peering down at him. Among them, one stood apart, his father. Aeon's voice cracked, trembling with confusion, "Baba, why?" But Rahim did not answer. His jaw clenched, his hands tightened into fists, and he turned his gaze away as if the very sight of his son would undo something inside him. That silence broke Aeon's heart more than the fall had hurt his body. The crowd dispersed only after dark, but not before hurling insults at Rahim. They swore he was no father, swore he had lost his soul, and some promised to bring justice for the boy. Rahim let them speak. He did not defend himself, did not shout, did not cry. He remained there, near the edge of the pit, watching, guarding, silent. That night, the boy below cried himself to sleep on the cold, damp earth while above him, under the stars, his father sat like a statue, unmoving, as though the weight of the world had chained him there. Zainab, Aeon's mother, heard of the incident from the villagers before she even saw her husband again. Her heart raced with terror as she ran toward the fields, her scarf flying behind her, tears blurring her vision. When she arrived, she collapsed to her knees at the sight of her son trapped below. She begged Rahim to explain, begged him to let the boy out, but he shook his head with a firmness that broke her spirit. "Not yet," he said, his voice low, almost hoarse, the first words he had spoken since the push. That was all. Not yet. No mother could accept that. She cried until her throat went dry, but Rahim would not be moved. For days, the villagers brought food and water for Aeon, lowering it with ropes into the pit. Some mocked Rahim openly as they did it, calling him cursed, calling him a devil in the shape of a man. Still he said nothing. At night, the boy's sobs carried across the fields, haunting those who heard. Some wanted to forcefully drag the boy out, but Rahim's towering figure near the pit, his fierce eyes, and the strange, desperate energy around him kept them away. They feared he had lost his mind enough to do worse if they interfered. The second day, Aeon stopped begging. Instead, he sat quietly, staring up at the faint light of the moon, wondering why his father had chosen to betray him. Memories of their life together flooded him. He remembered carrying water for his father in the fields, remembered the rare smile Rahim had given when Aeon had learned to plow straight lines. He remembered the times he had longed for a hug but received instead only a nod. Now, even that silent nod felt like a kind of love he had lost forever. By the third night, clouds rolled across the sky and thunder growled like an angry beast. Rain began to pour, heavy and unrelenting. The pit filled slowly with water, creeping higher around Aeon's ankles. He shouted in panic, calling for help. The villagers rushed with torches, horrified at the sight. "He will drown," they screamed. "Let him out." But once again, Rahim blocked their way. His voice cracked but remained unyielding. "Not yet." They accused him of being a murderer, raised sticks against him, but his burning eyes held them back. Zainab fell to the mud, wailing for her son, clawing at her husband's arm, begging him to stop this madness. Yet Rahim did not break. His body trembled, his lips quivered, but he remained where he was, guarding the pit as though guarding a secret that no one could yet know. The villagers would have torn him apart if not for the arrival of Karim, Rahim's childhood friend and one of the oldest men in the village. With his cane in hand and wisdom in his eyes, Karim stepped forward and silenced the angry mob with a single shout. He looked at Rahim, then at the pit, and sighed as though carrying the weight of a truth too heavy for most to bear. "You think this man is cruel," Karim said, his voice breaking. "You think he has lost his mind. But I will tell you something that will make your hearts bleed with shame." The villagers leaned in, their anger shifting into curiosity, fear, and unease. Karim revealed that weeks earlier, Rahim had found signs of deadly snakes nesting near the farmlands. Venomous creatures that had already killed cattle and could easily kill children playing in the fields. He had seen them slither toward the pit, nesting deep inside the hollow spaces beneath it. Rahim tried to kill them alone, burning the grass, blocking the burrows, but the snakes were cunning. They hid where no torch could reach. They would strike when least expected. And so Rahim devised a plan, harsh, unthinkable, but the only one he could trust. He knew snakes were drawn to the warmth and movement of a human body. By placing his son in the pit, he could lure them out, force them to surface where he could strike them down. Every moment Rahim stood guard, his eyes scanned the earth for the flicker of scales, the hiss of death. He had killed several already while the villagers slept. His silence was not cruelty but sacrifice. He endured his son's cries, endured his wife's heartbreak, endured the villagers' hatred, all to protect them. He had risked being remembered as a monster because if the truth had spread too soon, the snakes would scatter, endangering everyone. He chose to let the world despise him so long as it meant saving their lives. When Karim's words sank in, the villagers froze. Their torches trembled in their hands, their eyes softened with tears of shame. They looked at Rahim, who now trembled himself, his body weak from days without rest, his eyes hollow but still burning with love unspoken. Finally, he fell to his knees, his voice breaking into sobs. "I knew my son would hate me. I knew you all would curse me. But I could not let those snakes into our fields. Better you think me cruel than bury your children." Aeon's voice rose from the pit, choked with tears. "Father, I never hated you, I just didn't understand." The boy's words cracked the dam inside Rahim's chest. He leaned over, lowering a rope, his hands shaking as he pulled his son up into the dawn light. The moment Aeon's feet touched the earth, he collapsed into his father's arms, both of them crying openly, the boy clutching the man he had once thought had betrayed him. The villagers wept too, ashamed of their anger, ashamed of their words. Mothers covered their faces, fathers bowed their heads. They now saw that the man they had condemned was the very man who had saved them. Zainab, tears streaming down her face, embraced both husband and son, whispering prayers of gratitude. From that day on, the pit was no longer remembered as a place of cruelty but as a place of sacrifice. The villagers worked together to destroy the nests, sealing the ground, purifying the fields. And though Rahim never sought praise, people spoke his name with respect, teaching their children that sometimes love is not soft or sweet. Sometimes it is harsh, silent, and misunderstood, but it is love all the same. Rahim's story spread beyond the village, carried by travelers, told in hushed voices near fires, retold as a lesson of sacrifice. And every time someone remembered the father who pushed his son into a pit, tears welled in their eyes, not of anger but of admiration for a love that was willing to be hated if it meant saving lives. Aeon, who had once thought his father distant, now understood the depth of love hidden behind silence. He walked beside his father in the fields, no longer longing for hugs or words of praise, because he knew now that his father's love was carved into his very sacrifices. And when years later he himself became a father, he told his children the story, his voice trembling, reminding them that love sometimes wears the mask of cruelty, but beneath it beats the strongest, most selfless heart.